Hello and good evening. Oh, hi, Barbara. You're in there. You should get a prize for being first. Are you well? So you've got to get up early to catch some of these others. So well done. And it isn't going to be a long one tonight. And I will say that every time, but it absolutely isn't, because I really do need an early night tonight. And how are you this evening? Hope you're well. Just trying to keep myself warm at the minute. I finally got heating that is working, but the temperature's plummeted here. So I feel like an old granny. I'm sitting on the sofa and I've got a shawl over my legs. Oh, and the dog as well. So, well, this this stream tonight is just going to go a little bit away from what, just a touch out of my comfort zone. But we have talked about this before. It came up very briefly in one of the lives that we did, you know, when everybody's been bouncing stuff around. Hi, Kathy. How are you, lovey? What's it like on the Wirral tonight? Because I am bloody freezing here in Lancashire. I was just saying, although, you know, I finally got the heating sorted out, they drained the boiler for me on Monday. The boiler, sorry, they drained the radiator because the boiler's knackered, but they drained the radiators, so it seems to have worked now. And I've got it on and they're all working, but God, the temperature has just plummeted tonight. So I'm sitting with the blanket over my legs. I'm really cold. Oh, cold there as well. Thing is that you get the wind whipping straight in off the Irish Sea, don't you? So, I will hope you're wrapped up warm, especially if you've got to keep going out for ciggies. Well, as I was just saying, with this for people who are listening as well, you know, if you want to come in the chat, please do, but you know, no pressure. If you're quite happy sitting in the cheap seats, as they say, it's absolutely fine. Well, this tonight we touched on. This came up in a live just as a very brief little discussion point a week or two ago. And when we were talking the other night about aliens and the weird and wonderful mysteries, this is one of those subjects that is quite interesting in a few different ways. It's an unsolved, potentially an unsolved murder. It's potentially an unsolved kidnapping. It's potentially an alien abduction, and it is a mystery. So it's encompassing quite a few different things, which is why I thought I'd cover it. But also, it has another twist. So I'm just going to start rattling off about this one, and then I'll stop in a little while, because it's not everybody's cup of tea, so I don't expect there to be that many people coming in for this one tonight, but it's not a problem. So, hiya, Barbara. Sorry, chicken. I did say hello to you before, but I think you'd been waiting for us to come in, and then you may have gone off doing other things. Are you okay? Just before I start, because I like saying hello to everybody. And hope you're not as cold as I am. Hi, Simples. Doing an alien one just for you. Well, like I said, I don't expect there to be that many people because Aliens isn't everybody's cup of tea, although it is a mystery, this one. But I am really seriously going to have to do a short one tonight. So if I'm still on here by 10 o'clock, somebody needs to give me a little kick because I am tired. And I'm going to Porky's tomorrow. So, yeah. I'd like to at least look halfway decent. With that, were you in yesterday? And we were saying I'd have Cassie. Yeah, when Cassie was making a joke, because I said I'd look like I've got bags under my eyes, like old women's tits. So when he was leaving, Cassie said, "Night, tit eyes." Bless him. He's great. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one rather than chatting rubbish for a while. Now, Todmorden, it is a little market town in the north of England. Not really famous for anything. Having said that, it does have a place that makes the most amazing sausages, which is why we got talking about Todmorden the other day. So it's kind of, as we were discussing earlier today, it's one of those places that sometimes ends up in Yorkshire and sometimes ends up in Lancashire, a bit like Barnoldswick, which is in Lancashire, but it still has all the signs up saying it's in the East Riding of Yorkshire. So it's one of those places where, yeah, no problem, Kathy, no problem, love. It's one of those places where the boundaries change frequently. Now, what is weird is that Yorkshire is it's considered one of the real hotspots in the UK for UFO sightings. And I think there are close on 1,000 UFO sightings in Yorkshire in the last probably 15 years. So it is quite a lot. Now, one of the most famous of these sightings or UFO encounters, whichever, happened in 1980. And there were two main ones. I mean, there were others, but there were these two main ones, and they are sort of tenuously linked, which is why these two have become the most famous of these cases. Now, this all starts with a gentleman called Zigmund Adamski. And Zigmund Adamski and his wife, they were Polish, and they came over from Poland in the 1960s, and they settled in a little town in West Yorkshire called Tingley. Now, Zygmunt got a job as a miner, and he worked there from coming over from Poland. Now, at this time in 1980, his wife was suffering from multiple sclerosis. Zygmunt was still working down the pit. He was 56 at the time, and he applied for early retirement. One, because he'd heard that this colliery was potentially going to be closing, and two, because he really wanted to spend more time with his wife, and looking after her, because at this point she is now wheelchair bound. So that was just a little bit of a background on him. Now, he was it was quite a nondescript chap. There was nothing untoward about him. Family man, hard worker, all the neighbours liked him, very unassuming guy. And he was I think it was in June this was, he was due to have relatives come to stay because there was going to be a family wedding, and his goddaughter was getting married, and he had been asked to give the bride away. So he was really looking forward to it. I think they had a cousin and their partner staying with him, or parents staying with them. You know, there were family coming from Poland. It was something he was really looking forward to. And this was to take place on the Monday. Now, the day before, on the Sunday, Zigmund and his cousin had nipped into Wakefield to do a bit of shopping. They'd come back, they'd all had a family Sunday dinner. Then in the afternoon, he realised that he was short of a few bits, so decided to go. And when I'm saying a few bits, you know, like the bread, milk, he decided to nip to the local shops and to just pick up this couple of bits. So he had his, you know, as a lot of older fellas did back then, because I remember my granddad, you know, because he was from the same era as Zygmunt. My granddad always wore a three-piece suit, always. You know, his shirt and his tie and everything. Even if he was sitting in the house, he'd have suit pants on and a shirt and a waistcoat. So obviously gentlemen of that era, they always stuck to a particular dress code, especially on a Sunday. So he's worn his suit and he has gone down to the shops to get these few bits. Now, when he left his house, and this is about 3 o'clock, I'll say about 3 p.m, Sunday afternoon, and he nips out, and when he's on his way to the shops, he passes a neighbour. So they say hello, very briefly, you know, pass the time of day, nod, goodbye, see you soon, and off he went to the shops. Now, he did get as far as the shops, and he did purchase what he needed. And then that's the last time he was ever seen again alive. He just vanished. Nobody had seen where he went. Nobody had seen anything of him. Nobody heard from him. His belongings weren't found, so it wasn't like, you know, they found a spilt bag of groceries or a shoe, or they found nothing. It was just like he'd vanished into thin air. So it was a real mystery, you know, because obviously he had this family wedding. It wasn't like there wasn't anything going on in his life that he was looking forward to. This was a big wedding the next day, big event for him. So, as I said, it's just, he has literally just poof, vanished into thin air. Now, that was on the 6th of June. 5 days later, in a coal yard in Todmorden, the owner of the coal yard, his son, whose name was Trevor Park, was unlocking. So this was in the afternoon, and that was probably around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. He unlocked the coal yard to go back in to prepare his coal wagon for the last run of the day, so the afternoon deliveries. Now, he'd already been in and done the morning one. He had locked up at 11. Cooper. Sorry, the dog's off. Give me a second. Stop. He'd locked up the coal yard at 11 a.m. and he had gone off and, hi Sheila, hello lovely. I've only just started this one, so I've just done a little bit of background on Zigmund Adamski. So Trevor Park had left the coal yard for his morning rounds. He'd locked up at 11 a.m, had gone off delivering coal. He came back at 2, unlocked the yard to go in, was starting to load the sacks of coal onto his wagon, and happened to glance round and notice that on the top of this 12-foot high pile of coal, there was a body. Now, he wasn't sure if this was somebody alive or dead. He thought maybe it's somebody who's drunk and they've climbed up there. But either way, he was just feeling a little bit uneasy because this coal yard wasn't in the centre of town. it was in a bit of a more isolated spot. So he decided to call the local police. So he rang the police, and he also rang for an ambulance. Excuse me, just in case whoever it was, was ill or they were absolutely blind drunk. Now, give me a second. Just trying to sort myself out. So 2 police officers rocked up, and they get into the yard and they're looking up. One of the officers climbs to the top of the pile. He sees what he sees. He knows that this guy is dead. So he shouts to his colleague to come up and have a look as well. Now, his colleague was PC Alan Godfrey. And Alan scrambles up the pile of coal and he gets to the top. And at the top, they find Zigmund Adamski. Now, it was quite weird because he was clean. He was dressed, albeit, well, I'll get onto the dressed in a minute. He was shaved, so he had no more than 1 day's worth of stubble growth on his face, whereas he's been missing for 5 days. He was not dehydrated or undernourished, so they knew he'd obviously been eating and drinking well up to the point of his death. He had on his head, neck and shoulders at the back were some burns, and these burn marks were covered with a green gel that they weren't sure what that was. So obviously somebody has, the conclusion that you can come to is that, okay, these have occurred and somebody has treated them. So they know that he's not been, wherever he's been, he hasn't been without some form of aid or assistance. Then they look at his clothing. Now, although he's dressed, the impression they got was that either he'd been dressed by somebody else or he's been dressed by somebody who has got no concept of clothing, as in how it works, how you put it on, in which order it goes on. Now, although he had his suit on, but his shirt was missing and he only had on a string vest. His jacket was buttoned up incorrectly. His trousers were also fastened incorrectly. Although he had his socks and shoes on, the shoes weren't fastened in a way that they would have remained on his feet if he'd been picked up, say, for example. It's like they were plonked on there. And then also his glasses, his wallet and his watch were all missing. Hi, Joe. How are you? Yes, we're doing the aliens. Only a quick one. I will do a longer one on something else another night, but this is pretty local to me, so we're covering this one. Now, so when so the paramedics arrived, and then they confirmed that, life was extinct. And because the 2 police officers were, obviously it was very strange because they could see that this body was clean, so it had not been dragged up through the coal. They could see that there were some strange things about him, the clothing, the fact that his personal belongings were missing as well, which, could lead you to think that there's possibly a theft involved. But it was also the positioning, the placement of the body and how it got up onto the coal pile. So they called in the CID. And and they're the detectives for anyone outside of the UK. There are, the branch of detectives that each police force has. Hi, Lisa. Welcome in, lovely. So the CID came and they made a few notes. They noted that these suspicious looking burns on the back of his neck and his shoulders and the back of his head. They took samples of this green gel that was covering the burns, and that was sent off to the Home Office laboratories. And then the body was taken for an autopsy. Now, the coroner who carried the autopsy out was able to determine, and these were the weird things. So bear in mind, Zigmund has been missing for 5 days. Okay. He had been, as the police had observed, he was not looking undernourished or dehydrated, and the coroner confirmed this, that he had been eating and drinking well up until the day of his death, because he actually had an empty stomach when he was found, but he wasn't starving by any stretch. He just had nothing in his stomach that day. He also determined that he had died between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. that day. Now, that's that window between the coal yard closing and reopening again. So it's quite a short window that he died. He also confirmed that there was no more than 1 day's worth of stubble growth on his face. And the cause of death was put down as potential heart failure. So he couldn't find, or they couldn't find, any evidence of foul play. They couldn't find any evidence of suicide. So this is and I'm going to say in inverted commas, natural death. But still a bit suspicious. Now, unfortunately, when he was being interviewed about this, and the other thing as well, when they had the inquest, neither of the police officers were called to give evidence, which they were quite put out about, because there were some of the strange anomalies surrounding when they found the body and where it was placed and so on, that wasn't brought up at the inquest. So they were a bit hacked off about that. Now, when the coroner was interviewed afterwards, because he was still saying, this is very strange. It's very strange. I do not know how this man got onto the top of that coal pile, because, and we'll look at it logically. If he'd been dragged up there by somebody who had done him to death, there would have been coal dust all over him, and it would have displaced the coal on the pile, which it wasn't. Plus, there would have been, disturbance in the coal on the pile to indicate that somebody else has been on there as well, because coal, for the most part, is, circular or rounded at one side or another. And although you're stacking it, it is loosely stacked. So it's a bit like trying to climb a sand pile. You're going to get some displacement, and there was none there. So when he was being interviewed afterwards, the coroner made just an offhanded remark. But when he was asked about, how they think that he got there, I think he was placed there as well, Simples. Absolutely, I do. Because he wasn't dirty at all. But when the coroner was asked how he thinks he got there, he just said, well, I've got absolutely no idea. But if you were to tell me aliens dropped his body there, I'd probably only raise one eyebrow. Now, I don't think for a second that coroner thought it was aliens that had put him on there, but that phrase stuck in people's minds, especially as time went on and the further occurrences happened. So poor Mr. Adamski, he has, his family got no explanation for what had happened to him, other than, because nobody to this day knows how he got there. He'd never been to Todmorden. It was 20 miles away from where he lived, so they know he'd never visited there. He had no contacts there. He had no reason to have been there. It's just a very random place. But his family have never had any answers. So although the inquest deemed he had potentially died of heart failure, it still left his family with a lot of questions. So just before I carry on to the next part, has anybody got anything that they want to ask or raise about this one? About Zigmund? Because I just find it very, very odd that of all the places, why Todmorden? You know, there were a lot of investigators who were trying to make connections with, you know, family feuds and fallings out and all sorts of things, but none of it made any sense. None of it. And, oh, I'm sorry, I did forget something. Sorry, I've just remembered. The green substance that was covering the burn wounds on Zigmund Adamski, that the CID took samples of and sent those off to the Home Office laboratories in Wakefield. Now, they tested it, and extensive testing could not reveal what this this gel was made of. And to this day, they've got no idea what it was. It was obviously some form of a balm, you know, for the fact of where it was placed. So you could presume it's some form of an ointment, a healing ointment, but yeah, to this day, never found out what that was made out of. So I mean, I would be inclined to say, yes, it looks a little bit dodgy. Maybe there was some kind of an experiment carried out, and that was put on his back or his neck. Now, there is a little bit of conflicting information, because one story that I looked at says that when the two police officers climbed to the top of the coal pile and looked at Mr. Adamski, one report says that the officers commented that it looked like he'd just gone to sleep. Now, the other ones that I found have said that the police officers have said that neither of them would ever forget the look on Mr. Adamski's face, because it was one of abject terror, like he'd seen something just before he died that absolutely terrified him. So I don't know which of those is correct. I really don't. So I suppose either of those you can take from them what you will. I'm more inclined to think the second one, especially if they're saying that he died of heart failure, because he didn't have a bad heart. That's not to say people can't suddenly die of heart failure and then they discover there were heart issues after the fact. But I'd be more inclined to believe the second version, that possibly he had seen something so terrifying that he, you know, his heart's just given up. So, well, if there's no questions, I will carry on. So, so that was in the June. 5 months later, in the November, so we're back in Todmorden now. We're not in, you know, so we're in the town where Zigmund was found. Don't forget, he didn't live here. He lived 20 miles away. So this particular night, it's on the night shift, and there are telephone calls coming in from Todmorden into the police station, letting them know that there is a small herd of cows escaped from you know, some local farmer's field or barn, and they're wandering round what was a housing estate on the Burnley Road going out of Todmorden. So the police station are fielding these calls, and the latest one to come in, they decide they're going to, you know, they'll radio out and see who's in the area. And in the area that night is Police Constable Alan Godfrey. Now, this is the same Alan Godfrey who was one of the officers who found Zigmund Adamski's body 5 months earlier. Hi, Cassius. jump back to the beginning. Kayla forgot a passcode for her iPhone. It's been a pain in the ass trying to restore it. Oh, heck no. Oh, well, good luck with that, Cassius. And yeah, don't worry. We've not been going. I've only been going half an hour because it is going to be quite a quick one this tonight. But I just wanted to cover this alien abduction case. So going back, so the officer who was nearest to the Burnley Road was Alan Godfrey. Alan Godfrey was the same officer, the second one of the officers to climb up the coal pile in the coal yard and find Zigmund Adamski's body back in the June. And this is November, don't forget. So they radio through to Alan Godfrey and they just say, can you go along and just check, because these escaped cows are wandering round in the area surrounding the Burnley Road and the Burnley Road housing estate. Hi again, Lisa, you're right. So off he goes in his car. Now, as he's driving up the Burnley Road, because there are still areas of this road that are, there's no houses along them. It's quite a quiet road. So as he's driving along this road, he's coming up to the Burnley Road housing estates, and he suddenly sees in front of him, there's a bit of a crest of the road, not a lot, but just enough that he can't see. But he just sees some very bright lights that look like they're at an angle. The way they're shining would give him the impression that it was a large vehicle at an angle across the road, just out of his line of vision. Now, his first thought is, oh, it's a bus or a wagon, and they've either hit one of these cows that's wandering around and they've crashed, or they've swerved to avoid one of these cows wandering around and they've crashed. So he had both of these in his mind. So he radios it back to the station and just says, there's something that looks like, don't know if it's a bus, don't know if it's a large vehicle, potential collision up here. I'm just going to go and check it out. I'll get back to you and I'll let you know. So he turns his lights on, the blue flashing lights on his police car, and he drives up. Now, it's probably about 100 yards or so, and he just stops dead, because in front of him, hovering no more than 5 feet off the ground, is what he described as a craft shaped like a diamond. So it had lots of, it's like multifaceted sides, flat sides and what have you, with, it seemed to be rotating, and it was giving out a very, very bright light. Now, he tried to radio back to the station at this point, but all he was getting was static. Now, he wasn't going to attribute it to what he was seeing, because along this particular stretch of road, there were some significant black spots. So he obviously had tried to radio through. Nothing's happening. He hasn't got a clue what he's seeing. He's kind of in shock, but as a police officer, he's also trying to be quite rational. So he does the only thing he can do at that point, and don't forget, this is 1980, so he's not carrying a mobile, a smartphone, or he's not got a camera in his car. So he gets his notepad out and he starts to sketch what he's seen. And it was something like 20 foot wide and 16 foot high. So it wasn't a small craft thing, whatever it was that he saw. And just as he's finished sketching it, now it's spinning, and you can see that because there's fallen leaves and branches and all sorts of things on the road in front of his car where this thing is. And like I said, it's pretty close to him at this point. When it's rotating, it's going quite quickly, and it's causing a little bit of a whirlwind. So all the leaves and branches, twigs, whatever that are underneath it that would be on the road are whipping around. And he said, as this is happening, the light starts to get even brighter. And it's so bright that he's got to put his hands up, to try and keep it out of his eyes. And then all of a sudden, there's like an almighty flash, and it's so bright. I mean, he kind of feels like he's blacked out for a second. It's that painful, the flash of this light. And the next thing, so he opens his eyes again, and this time he is 100 yards down the road in his vehicle still, the other side of what he'd just seen. So imagine that craft wasn't in the road and he just managed to carry on driving. He was 100 yards further up than where he was when he first spotted it. And it's like, he just doesn't have a clue how he's got there, because he definitely doesn't remember driving there. And he looks around and this craft, we'll call it, isn't there anymore. And he's trying to use his radio and it's still just static. So he decides to turn around and boot it back to the station, because prior to that, as he reverses up, he goes to the exact spot where this craft had been circling just above the ground, and he finds this perfectly clear circle in the middle of the road. So it's perfectly clear of leaves, of twigs, of any kind of debris. And it's also dry, because the roads were actually damp, but this beautiful, perfect circle is actually dry, which led him to believe that whatever this was, not only was, there was some form of wind coming out of it, but it was also generating heat. So, hi, Denny. How are you? So he boots it in his car back into Todmorden and to go to the police station. Now, unbeknownst to him, all the time he's been out, his colleagues have been trying to get in touch with him over the radio, and they're getting nothing either. So it's been static at his end, and it's also static at their end. But they've not been too fussed because of the issues with that area. Occasionally black spots will crop up. So it's not seen as a big deal. However, you'll see what was a big deal in a second, because Godfrey arrives back at the police station. His colleagues are going, "Where the hell have you been?" He's just about to try and tell them what he's seen, and he glances up at the clock on the wall, and he's lost a whole hour, because it's now showing 6:30. And when he last looked, it was 5:30. This is in the morning. And he is absolutely, he's like, how's it got to this time? He's really, really shocked. So he then speaks to his superior, and he just said, you need to come out with me. There's something that you need to see. So his superior gets in the car with him, and out they go back to the Burnley Road, to the exact spot where he's seen this craft. Now, his colleague does support him in that he said there was a perfectly circular patch in the middle of the road that was devoid of leaves, debris, and it was drier than the surrounding tarmac. But they see no sign of any craft, that there's nothing else. And while they're standing on the road, they hear some mooing. So they look at each other, and it's obviously more than one cow. So they go off the side of the road. Now, they end up, it's a very, very short space, short distance from where they are. They then end up at this fence that is looking into a rugby ground. And on this rugby field are the 6 missing cows that have apparently been wandering around all night. And it's a fenced in rugby ground. It's not open where you can just wander on. It's actually fenced in, and it's completely enclosed on 3 sides. Like, there's no way in. The only way into it is half a mile down the road. And that way you could just wander in. But there are no tracks leading from there to where the cows are situated at this far end that they are now at. And Godfrey and his colleague did say afterwards, it looked like however the cows had got in there, they'd literally been picked up and placed there, because there were no tracks, to show how they'd got in. So that was the thing with Alan Godfrey. Now, the next day, there's quite a bit of piss taking going on. And this is where it's pretty bad, because People now seem to think Alan Godfrey was after some attention. He really wasn't. He didn't want to talk about it. His colleagues on the day shift were just ribbing him unmercifully. He was hoping that it would just die down. And, you know, after a little while, it did. But, you know, there were always some jabs at him when he was, you know, if he came past or if he walked into the canteen. So he was just trying to ignore them as best as he could. Oh, what's simple? Aliens are always moving cows around. Are they? I mean, I know about the mutilation simples, but I didn't know about the moving things around. I'll just wait for a second if anyone wants to come back. There is a significant delay on between StreamYard and chat at the moment. This has happened the last couple of days. So I don't know. So when I go completely quiet, it's because I'm actually waiting to give people a chance to reply. But it's how long do you give? So I'll just go back to talking about Alan. So after a little while, why can't I use emojis? You have, there's one there, Lisa. You've got a cry emoji. Maybe they're just not showing up on your phone. Maybe. But yeah, it's showing up on my screen. Bit bizarre. Yeah, so he thinks it's going to die down. And then it's not long after he then gets the shock of his life, because his story has hit the local newspaper. And it turned out that one of his colleagues off the day shift, when the, you know, like the local news will ring in, or at least they used to, they would ring into the police stations to try and find out, you know, if there was any interesting stories from the night before, you know, that they could put into the newspapers the next day. So apparently this had happened, and one of his colleagues had decided to basically spill the beans and say, yeah, one of our officers has, you know, saw aliens last night, or whatever it was that they said. So this story has made the local press. Alan Godfrey is not impressed at all. And he's even less impressed when not only does this story hit the local newspapers, it then gets taken up nationally. Now, the only positive from that was that when it went national, there were also some other tagged in incidences from at the same time as Alan Godfrey's. There were 3 other West Yorkshire constables who were actually not far from Todmorden looking for a stolen motorbike, and they observed lights in the sky buzzing around. There was also a traffic officer in Greater Manchester who witnessed something similar as well. There were other people in the Todmorden area who, and you know, I can go through those another time, but they also witnessed flashing lights, strange object. There was a lady who also witnessed a diamond-shaped object, exactly the same as Alan Godfrey. So these had kind of come to light, but Alan Godfrey's superiors are a bit hacked off with this. You know, now whether they're thinking it's going to dent the credibility, I really don't know. But they're not happy with him. And he doesn't want to talk about it anyway. So the ribbing all starts yet again. And then he is approached by Chief Constable of, I'm pretty sure that was Greater Manchester. Now, this Chief Constable had one of his officers approach him with a report that he had seen on a different occasion. This isn't the same occasion as Alan Godfrey, but that he had seen something, a UFO, and had experiences. So in order to try and get to the bottom of it, this chief constable had heard about Alan Godfrey and decided to contact him because he wanted to see if there were any commonalities between the case his officer was talking about and Alan Godfrey's. So he contacted him and he tried to convince him and said, I really would like to speak to you. And he said, I am actually a believer in UFOs, but I would love to have the opportunity just to speak with you to see what your experience was, and I compare it to my officers. So eventually Alan Godfrey agreed and they met up. Now, when he relayed his tale to the chief constable, what the chief constable then asked could he do was, because all Alan was saying was that he had this jump in time where 1 minute he was drawing this craft, the light got bright, and then he came to 100 yards past where this thing had been with no recollection of getting there. So hearing about this, the chief constable kind of talked to Alan Godfrey and he said, why don't we hypnotize you and see if we can find what happened to you in this lost time? Because obviously, it must have been in the region of an hour, the fact that he was missing an entire hour as far as he was aware from when he, had seen this thing to when he got back to the station on that first night. So, oh, excuse me, just going to yawn. Oh, I beg your pardon. So he kept asking Alan Godfrey, and he said, please let me get some hypnotherapists in, and we'll just try and see if we can help you to see if we can find out what happened to your memory. So eventually and reluctantly, Alan agreed. Now, they got 2 of these hypnotherapists in, and over the course of the next couple of months, they were doing sessions with Alan Godfrey just to try and get him to regain this time jump that he's got. And he did start to remember some stuff, but again, he was very cautious about saying, yes, these are my memories, because he still, although this came out in the hypnotherapy sessions, he never had any recollection of it happening. It never came back to him, so it was only under hypnosis. So he was always very quick to point that out, and just say, I don't remember this happening. I really don't remember this happening. This is what's coming up in my sessions, but I do not remember this. So what came out under hypnotherapy was that so if we go back to the car, so the last memory that Alan has got is of him sketching this diamond-shaped object, and then the little whirlwind of twigs and leaves and whatever else was getting faster and faster and faster, and then an almighty bright, and it was so bright it was painful, this light filled his car, and that was it. He didn't remember anything till he woke up in the car 100, and I'm saying woke up, it wasn't like he was lying down. It was as though he'd just driven and his eyes had suddenly opened. So it was the weirdest thing ever. So just let me check and see if anybody has written anything in the chat. Nope. So as far as he was concerned, he was drawing and sketching this diamond. There was then this almighty flash, and he can't remember what happened after that. However, under hypnosis, what actually happened was, and he relayed this tale on more than one occasion, even though in his conscious state he cannot remember it, but after this almighty blinding flash, he then began to float, and he felt very weightless, but he felt like he was in a room, just floating, horizontally. He then saw what he described as a very tall man in a bit of a robe and a skull cap. And he referred to this man as James. Now, he said there were also in this room where he was floating around in, he said there were several little robots of no more than 3 foot high. Now, it was only later, under later hypnosis, these hypnotherapy sessions, and when he was hypnotized, he then said that actually they weren't robots, they were little creatures, and he was actually really scared of them. Now, he appeared to be under the impression that they were doing some form of experiments on him because they attached something to his left ankle and his right wrist. But again, he just wasn't sure what they were. Oh, hi, Kathy. Get back to YouTube. No problem. It shouldn't be, you can always, I tend to go back onto replay. I do it at 1.75. I've watched and heard similar stories like that. It's under hypnosis. They always remember more. They do, Cassius. It's like that flipping film, The Fourth Kind. I don't know if you've seen that, hon, but oh, wow. Does that give you the heebie-jeebies? Because it's a real story as well. It was what Lady Witch and I were talking about the other day. So, Alan Godfrey, these stories of the hypnotherapy sessions have eventually leaked back to his superiors. Now, his superior calls a halt to this. You do not, you're not getting involved in this anymore. This is going to call us into disrepute. And then what can only be nowadays described as bullying. He was it was being suggested to him for transferring. It was suggested to him to, resign. He was constantly being ribbed about this thing, and none of this was anything that he wanted. He didn't want any of this attention. He'd never really wanted to talk about it, about the encounter. And he absolutely did not want to talk about what was coming through from these hypnotherapy sessions, which was he'd potentially been abducted by aliens. He really didn't want to talk about anything like this. Anyway, eventually, Alan ended up he was quite badly injured. There was a bit of a disturbance one night, nothing related to this, but there was a bit of a disturbance one night when he was trying to make an arrest. He ended up hospitalised, and as a result of those injuries, he did end up having to give his job up as a police officer. So, were they both linked? Got absolutely no idea, but what are the odds on Zigmund Adamski being found by the same police officer who 5 months later has an abduction experience himself, albeit not remembering it and only getting it back under hypnosis? But what are the odds of that? And yes, it could be a coincidence because it's a small area. Todmorden's not a big metropolis. It's a small area. I've heard a lot of different theories about Zigmund Adamski. Some people say that there was a family feud that he had run away to get out of, that he had a restraining order against another member of family, that he had Polish relatives saying that they were going to, they'd kill him and make sure nothing was ever found of him. But I don't know where these came from. They just don't make any sense because, as everybody said, he was really happy. He was a well thought of guy. He had a stable job, and there was a wedding being carried out the next day, the day after he went missing. And he was giving the bride away. I mean, what an honour. It wasn't stressing him out. Nothing was stressing him out. I think the most telling thing with Zigmund Adamski is his placement on top of the coal. because I cannot. You can kind of make a... You can come up with an explanation, a logical explanation for most other things. However, I don't know if, and I don't know if any of you, what your thoughts are as to how he may have got on top of that coal pile. Because that's the one that is going to stump you every single time. The coroner didn't have a clue. The police didn't have a clue. The ambulance service didn't have a clue. You know, and most of us here have not got a clue. So I'd just be interested to see what other people think, because that's the real teller for me. As long as you're unable to find an explanation for how he ended up there, not covered in shite or whatever else, until you can give me an explanation for that, aliens, as far-fetched as they may be, seem to be the only that seems to be the only explanation. No problem, Mrs. Mercury. Hello, my love. Especially if the yard was locked. Well, that's it, Simples. And not only that, the yard was locked, but the coal pile was surrounded by railway sleepers as well. So this is one I cannot fathom. Well, Mrs. Mercury, I'm exactly the same. You can fathom everything else apart from when you get to what his actual state was when he was found. So he's died in that 4-hour period the day he was found. He's found with, you know, at most a day's growth of stubble. He is found with inexplicable burns on the back of his neck and his shoulders. These burns are covered in some form of an ointment that even the Home Office laboratories could not identify and haven't identified to this day. That his clothing was placed in... It wasn't... He wasn't dressed in a way that would indicate somebody who was used to dressing themselves on a daily basis for the last 56 years, or we'll say 54 years, because we'll say it might have been 2 when he learnt how to dress himself. So for 50 plus years has been able to dress himself. You know yourself, you can dress yourselves in the dark. Simples, there are none. I'm not saying there aren't any, but everything related to this case and to Alan Godfrey's case, the files are closed and they are classified. They have been put down as classified information, which also means that it's not covered under the same rules of freedom of information. Alan Godfrey even tried to get hold of copies of reports relating to himself and couldn't. The coal piles hadn't even been disturbed, if I remember rightly. No, you are right, Mrs. Mercury. There was nothing. And like they were saying, if he climbed up there on his own to die, he would have disturbed some of the coal and he would have been covered in coal dust. He wasn't. He was clean. If somebody else had dragged his body up, up the coal pile to leave him there, as maybe, some serial killers will stage a body, but there was no disturbance. Oh, no problem, Lisa. I'll catch you later, sweetheart. You have a good evening. Yeah, it is telling, Simples. It absolutely is. Why would there be any reason? Because as far as the courts and our legal system is concerned, Adamski is a closed case. They've had the inquest, they've got the coroner's report, no foul play. So why are his records sealed? Why can you not get hold of anything? So there are no photographs. Nobody has ever seen photographs of either the pile or his burns or any other injuries. Now you tell me. Because I cannot think of a single reason why his files then would be classified. Now, maybe Alan Godfrey's, because as much as we may think that's wrong, and I don't know, and if anybody, you know, anybody's in the police force who's listening, please feel free to correct me. But I would think, yeah, they might classify his statements and so on, because at the time he was a serving police officer, and given his role and given what he was saying and the information that was landing in the press, that, yeah, they might have classified that because it was, in their opinion, calling the police force into disrepute. I don't know. That's just something I'd throw out there. But if anybody can, you know, wants to correct me on that, feel free. It's just, you know, an idea. Simple as meerkat. There's a ranch or farm somewhere in the USA where cattle move, disappear, reappear. Experimented on and dead. Look for the video tomorrow. It's Skinwalker Ranch, Simples. I think we were talking about that last night, the Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, that's the part that gets me. No actual disturbance. That's impossible to do, to be honest. I don't believe in aliens. But this Todmorden case kind of makes me doubt that. Well, I know. And the fact that there are close on 1,000 reported sightings stroke encounters around, you know, in Yorkshire, of which Todmorden is a real hotspot. Now, incidentally, we were talking about this morning, and Porky used to live not far from there. He grew up over in that neck of the woods. So I didn't ask, he just suggested he's going to take me up there on Saturday. We're going to go up on Saturday morning up into the hills up there, take the dog up for a run, and have a look round where a lot of these sightings are occurring. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that because I've never been up there. But yeah, Simples, the Skinwalker Ranch, there's a lot of weird stuff happen there. However, there are also a lot of people debunking it and saying that things are being faked, shall we say. I don't think so. Because I watched something with it was the rancher who lives on there, and this story that he tells, it's quite shocking. Apparently, he was going checking on his cattle. He went into one paddock and there was a newly born calf, you know, born within the last 24 hours, shall we say. So, and this is out in the middle of nowhere, this particular paddock. So he checks on the calf and it's just standing there near its mum. He then walks to the other end of the paddock just to check on the rest of the cattle. He turned around, he came back, and he gets back to where this calf was, and the calf is dead. And when he gets closer to check on the calf, it has had one of these, you know, the experimentation things where they found the cows and they look like their eyeballs have been cut out with lasers and the tongues are missing, because they sometimes take their arseholes, don't they? They burn out their arseholes and their udder and the genitals. And this is what had happened to that calf. Now, this is in the space of minutes. There's no road nearby. Nobody, he would have heard somebody coming in. He definitely would have heard, you know, you can't torture an animal and not hear something. And it was just like it happened in a split second, and that was it. Now, there was nobody else around. He cannot explain that, and that's what happened on Skinwalker. Simples, please keep him on a lead. I would hate him to get beamed up. They love animals. Well, we're going in the daylight. We're not going at night, Simples. You wouldn't get me up there at night. I'll absolutely promise you that. It's also highly dubious that files have not been released. That sounds great. Look, you have any chance of a video if you see out good going on. Yeah, well, I did say that I wouldn't mind, you know, if we see anything, just to, you know, put a little video together. Is that the same video where they talk about the female Bigfoot and the bull? I've not seen that bit, Simples. I don't know about that. If you want to tell me what that one is. But I'm just yeah, I can't think of any other explanation for either of, you know, for either Zigmund Adamski or Alan Godfrey. I think if you were going to try and cast doubt on anything, if you're going to be a skeptic, which I'm not a skeptic, I'm kind of yeah, because I'm not trying to debunk stuff. I'm one of these people who I'll believe it. I won't disbelieve it, but I'm not a true believer because I want to see evidence for myself. Now, I have seen, which I remember telling you all about quite a while ago, I have seen something. However, I don't know what it was. So although I sometimes joke and say that, you know, I've got, you know, I don't believe in aliens, I don't know what this was. It could have been an alien craft. It could have just been a stealth craft. You know, so some brand new, newly tested RAF or American Air Force craft. I don't know. I don't know. Didn't see any little green men. Didn't get beamed up. Didn't have any car breaking down or mobile phones not working or lost time. It was just that triangular object traveling at a very low, you know, a height that wasn't much higher than the car we were in, and then just vanished. It was hovering like a helicopter would have done without any sound whatsoever. Don't know what it was, and that happened up at Loughton, so which isn't far from Leigh in Lancashire. So yeah, that was kind of on where Lancashire and Greater Manchester and Cheshire kind of converged. That was that particular area there. So, oh, that's it. Oh, hi, Eternal Flame. Yeah, Vicky Dinsdale. That's who Pork Chop had told me to look into before. She saw, I couldn't remember her name, Vicky Dinsdale. She also, at the same time that Alan Godfrey saw the Diamond spacecraft, she saw it as well. Now, she stayed quiet for the last 40 years because she didn't want to be subjected to the same ridicule that he was. He, because it ruined his life. You know, he was talked about, he was laughed about, people were trying to debunk him, and he didn't go out asking, you know, he didn't ask for any attention. He was quite reluctant to speak about it at all. So yes, Vicky Dinsdale was the same, and she finally came out and came clean and said, yeah, I actually saw it at the same time as him, and it was probably exactly the same thing that he saw. Betty and Barney Hill, they did tests on their car and it showed marks on it. Oh, it might be Hill. Do you know what? I can't remember Cassie's, but I do know it's Betty and Barney. There's just so many of these things that are occurring. I mean, we're not far from where, again, it's in the other direction from Todmorden, but again, not that far as the crow flies anyway. And on a clear day, I can see this from where I live. But there's Winter Hill, Rivington Pike, and Winter Hill, which are on the Pennines, and also this is one of the hot spots, and again, funnily enough, it is as you go in, you know, a county boundary, so you've got Lancashire going into Greater Manchester, but that is quite a hot spot for UFO sightings. you know, you're always hearing about them happening up on Winter Hill or up round Rivington Pike. You're not going to make up a story. Oh, knowing you're going to be ridiculed. They released a TikTok video. Glad they released that too. I know. But do you know what? They've released that. What else are they hiding, Cassius? It's like this. What else? Why are those records for Zigmund Adamski classified? Why? There's no reason for them to be. As I said, I've given an explanation, possibly why Alan Godfrey's are. He was a serving police officer. It may cast the service into disrepute. So his are classified. That I can kind of, I don't agree with it, but I can kind of understand. Although I don't believe in aliens, in the late 70s, early 80s, my sister and I saw a very strange thing, very, very high up in the sky, was these lights that just hovered for such a long time. Well, somebody, Mrs. Mercury, might, because where, do you mind me? You have told me before, and I don't want you to dox yourself. Roughly whereabouts are you? Because I think somebody might. Are you near Rossendale by any chance? The same night Granada reports were inundated with calls about the same thing. And I'm asking you for a reason there. The next village to me is a hotspot, Normanton in Wakefield. Right, okay. I mean, in Wakefield, wasn't that... Oh, you lived in Eccles then, right, okie dokie. I didn't know if that was when you lived up, because you're not, like you were saying, you're not far from Toddy now, are you? Yeah, as I was going to say with Wakefield, because that's not far from where, you know, Zygmunt Adamski actually went the morning of his disappearance. He went there with his cousin. You know, they did a bit of shopping prior to the wedding that was going on the next day. Came back, enjoyed a Sunday lunch with his family, and then poof, gone. I'll tell you what else as well. And I listened to a podcast quite a while ago, and it was just some people who, some of them were UFO investigators, and some of them were paranormal investigators, and some of them were cryptid investigators. And oh yeah, sorry, Mrs. Mercury. Yeah, I know where Eccles is as well. Sorry, we've done the same thing, haven't we? And I forget there are people in America who are listening as well. So yeah, Manchester is a big city in the north of England, and Eccles is like a little an outlying area. So yeah, one of the things as well, which has been reported in America, it's been reported in, I've got to think, what's the other country? I think it was in France. I think it was in northern France. But, and it's also been reported here, is that they get a lot of these sightings of craft, you know, these jumping about flashing lights that kind of, they'll hover and then they whiz off somewhere else, and they whiz off somewhere else, then they go back to hovering again, and they can be in funny light formations. A lot of them occur around battlefields, you know, old battlefields. Now, Wakefield How far is Wakefield from Towton, Eternal Flame? Do you know that? Just off the top of your head? Well, probably not off the top of your head, but I'm just wondering, because that's a battlefield, isn't it? I just, for some reason, I've got it in my head that Wakefield isn't that far from Towton, but I might be wrong. But then again, I don't think there are any battlefields up on the hills around Todmorden. There aren't any battlefields up on the hills of Rivy and Winter Hill, but there are Stone Age burial mounds. So I don't know, could that have something to do with it? Just see if I've missed anything else. No. So, I mean, has anybody got any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on why? Because I'd just like to see if anybody either, well, you don't have to agree with me, but if there's anybody that disagrees and what your theory would be on the Alan Godfrey classification, you know, the fact that they've classified all reports relating to his sighting and his experiences. I mean, I think we can all agree there's absolutely no reason whatsoever for Adamski's, none. But I'm trying to play devil's advocate with Alan Godfrey's. All right, 40 minutes to Todmorden. Right, no worries. I just had a feeling that Wakefield wasn't that far from Towton. Oh, and he's off. Stop it, Cooper. Stop. Just going to Google about Granada reports regarding the reports of alien sightings. Oh, brilliant, Mrs. Mercury. Great. I mean, if you come up with any links, you know, please feel free. Just cut and paste them and drop them in the chat for people. Because as I said, the aliens, I don't know a great deal about it. I've only decided to cover this just to, you know, because quite a few people wanted to have a little bit of a chat about them, and hopefully so I could learn a little bit more. But this one has got me absolutely baffled. There are, I mean, I can tell you, because you won't have all heard it, but I can tell you about mine, my experience that, like I said, I'm not saying it was an alien because I still do not know what it was, but I was, I'd been on a date and I was driving. We were, Towton is more York way. All right, okay, so it's the other, yeah, so it's going in the other direction. All right, thank you, Eternal Flame. We were in this car, my car. I was driving. We had met for a drink at a pub called the Greyhound, which is on the road that's called the East Lancs Road. It goes into Manchester, so it's on the outskirts of Lee. We were having a drink in there, and then I was driving this lad home that I'd had the date with, and I was quite a way away from where I lived. I'd come out of my own area. So we then were driving, we crossed over the East Lancashire Road, and we were in a place called Lowton, Lowton. And it was a country road initially. And as we were driving down there, and this was a really warm summer's evening, this was in the August, it was a very warm evening. We had the windows down in my car, and the guy I was with just said, "What the F is that?" And in front of us, we could see, because it was a summer's evening, it was actually quite a light evening, to be honest. And this was round about midnight-ish, because we'd stayed in the pub until kicking out time. So it would have probably been somewhere between 11:30 and midnight. We see this thing, and if you imagine you're on a country road, you've got trees either side, but it is although it's a country road, it's a fairly wide road. It's a very decent road going into Lowton. you've got telephone poles with the telephone wires going across, you know, the roads at different places, probably at a similar height to the tops of the trees. And just above the tops of the trees was this huge flat black shape. So this was, as we were coming round a bend, we could see it up ahead, and this is why. So I slowed down, and we can see this thing, and we get even closer. I'm going, what the hell is that? But it was moving really, really slowly. It wasn't an optical illusion because it was just going very, very slowly. And I would say it was no more than, I mean, if it was 50 feet above us, that would have been really pushing it. I'd be more inclined to say between 20 and 30 feet above us. And we ended up virtually underneath it as it was. Well, we weren't underneath it, straight underneath it. It had kind of crossed the road over to the right and was just going over these trees as we got at right where it was. And then it went into, and there was a field. So we'd stopped the car and we were watching it. And it is just hovering. There was no sound out of it, and it was black. I don't recall. I think there was a light underneath it, but I don't recall seeing any lights anywhere else on it. And it kind of was moving incredibly slowly. I could have walked slowly, quicker than that was moving. And it moved very, very slowly. And it kind of came around the field, and it was coming back towards it, because we were kind of moving the car around so we could get a better view of it. And then all of a sudden, gone. That was it, gone. So to this day, and it was huge. Whatever this was absolutely huge. But I don't know what it was. Never heard anything. And, you know, over the years, I've gone on to different sites, you know, when I remember it, because it's not something that's haunted me. But like tonight, when I remember about it, I then think, I'm just going to have a look and see if there were any sightings that year, that time, in that area. And I'll look, and there never have been. So, but having said that, there was nobody around that night. You know, it was that August bank holiday, and yeah, late-ish, and nobody was there. Oh, sorry about the dog. No, Cassius, it is. But it didn't frighten me. And like I said, because I'm not sure what it was, so I'm not saying an alien alien ship. And when I told my dad, and he was telling me, oh, it'll be one of them, it'll be some bloody experimental airplane from the because he always said, from the Yanks at Burton Wood, because there were American Air Force were there at Burton Wood. Apparently, I don't even know if they were still there then, but that was the first thing my dad said. Some experimental aircraft from them Yanks, he said. Eternal Flame. You mentioned battlefields. There was the Battle of Wakefield at Sandal Castle, and that's not far from Normanton. Right, okay. Oh, well, that kind of makes a bit of sense then. I mean, it's only a theory about battlefields and you know, sightings, especially lights. And I think it's more, they're not so much sightings of UFOs or aliens. They tend to be more sightings of these lights, unexplained hovering lights that people say, well, they're definitely not aircraft. You know, the ones that kind of whip around, or they'll kind of go in weird directions or move in formation, and then all of a sudden just shoot off at ridiculous speeds. I was Cassius. I mean, initially I was like, you know, as you do, what the hell is that? Oh my God. But then, yeah, we were curious and didn't feel threatened or frightened. I just don't know what it was. But I would have expected something that was hovering or moving at that kind of slow speed would have made some noise, and it didn't. It was deathly quiet. I didn't even hear the rushing of any wind or... So, as I said, I've got no idea what it was. We didn't see anything. the lad I was with kept saying it was a UFO, but obviously at that time I was thinking UFOs looking like little spaceships. It's only years later that I've heard that people see these triangular spacecraft that do look very similar to the stealth airplanes, which is, this didn't look exactly the same. This was more like a full-on triangle that we saw, but you know, I can't say it wasn't some form of a, you know, a terrestrial aircraft, because I don't know. But yeah, I'd just be really interested if I could find out. But, you know, I don't think I'm ever going to do that. It's quite a long time ago now, and nothing has, because I would think, unless it's somebody like me who maybe other people saw it and they just haven't made reports. Because I've not made a report. I've not contacted anyone and said, I saw this. I've not got a clue what it was, but I mean, has anybody else had any unexplained experiences? Because I know Simples, when you've been telling me about greys and so on, is that just a fascination, or have you seen something? I don't know that I would like to see something that I could, without a shadow of a doubt, say that is not of this world, that has come from outer space somewhere. I don't think I would. I don't think I'd deal with it very well. Let's put it that way. That's why I'm quite happy to go up in those up in the hills on Saturday, but during the daytime with pork chop. You've not seen anything? Right, okay. Do you know anybody who has? Simples? Because I was just wondering, because obviously, you know, you do know a lot about grey aliens and so on. Or is this just something that you become interested in and then you have, you know, you've read up about it or watched films about it or documentaries and so on? I'm just curious. Because as I said, even though I saw whatever it was I saw, it didn't really spark an interest in me to check aliens out. But is that because I didn't associate it with aliens? I really don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated by, as you were saying about Skinwalker, I'm fascinated with all these, like the cattle mutilations. You know, I don't mean from, you know, from the gory side of things, but from what the hell are they? Oh, you do, but people think he's mad. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That's it in a nutshell. People think you're mad. I mean, look at all the people. Do you know what I always think of? It always reminds me, that film, Independence Day, and the guy who, you know, the crazy one, Randy Quaid's character. Oh, hi, Porky. Hello. We've just been talking about Todmorden, and Simples was saying keep Cooper on his lead on Saturday in case anything beams him up. So we should be okay. We're going up there in the daytime. Yeah, so that Randy Quaid character, so he had claimed that he had been abducted by aliens, and they'd experimented on him and everything. He turned to drink, didn't he? So everybody was taking the mickey out of him. Even when the aliens invaded and they knew that aliens did exist, they were still looking at him sideways, by the fact that he said that he'd been abducted. Beam him up, you're not that lucky, I know. You might be lucky, I might get beamed up. Let's have a look. Halifax is another town with a lot of sightings, and on one occasion 2 fighter jets were following it. Someone requested a report through the Freedom Act, and that was declined as well. Yeah, they're very good at putting them down as classified, because if they're classified and under national security, then you can't have the information. Randy Quaid always maintained he was abducted. Randy Quaid is off his effing butt. Have you followed him on Twitter? He's just yeah, he's batshit crazy. Simples. I've seen some of his stuff. Granted, it's not all clear, but some is. I honestly don't think he has the ability nor the software to manipulate photos or videos. Well, that's interesting. A man can only dream of it, my precious little nettle. You'd miss me if I got beamed up. Well, you'd miss me tiger bread. I didn't realise, though, that, Cassius, that Randy Quaid reckoned he'd been... I know he reckoned there was some stuff. He was always talking about deep state, isn't he? And the government and all these weird things that were going on. I might miss you, but I'd keep shooting anyway. Ba-dum ching, you're here all week. Yeah, I didn't realise that Randy Quaid, as a person, reckons he'd been abducted. I was referring to his character in the film. But it doesn't surprise me. But he did always make me laugh. He used to upload all manner of shit onto Twitter. I'm sure his Twitter account got took down at one point. If not now, it's been taken down as well. I've got no idea. But yeah, he'd upload these like real rantings, or he'd have like psychedelic colours, and he'd have manipulated his voice, and it was the weirdest thing ever. I mean, who was the? Oh, he had a real thing about Hillary Clinton. You know, he was just like ripping her a new arsehole every 2 minutes. Yeah, I think he was having a bit of a psychotic break. Keep your tiger bread recipe under your singlet so the aliens don't get it before me. Nope. Oh, well, Mrs. Mercury, drop me your email. If you go to my About Me on my channel, my email is in there. If you drop me an email and let me know who you are. If you put your real name, I'll be like, who are you? You have to tell me you're Mrs. Mercury. And then I'll send you, I can email it to you if you like. I WhatsApped it to Green Eyes. She's going to have a go of it on her magic bread. But with tiger bread, you make it slightly different because you put sugar in the dough. He is really funny, Cassius. Oh, yeah. I quite like quirky people. I like batshit crazy people. Just because they make me feel more normal. Let me just check that I've not missed anything else out. I am making a point of missing comments, and I'm really sorry to anybody if I miss your comments or I miss saying hello, because it's really difficult trying to do this and chat and keep an eye on. He was an alcoholic, don't know if he is now. Now, I don't know if he is now either. But I'll be honest with you, he looked like somebody who had had a complete psychotic break. I don't think he had. I think that was just him. All right, babes, see you in a second. Kill things. Unless that's your tea arriving at the door. And that's not me asking. I'm just making a statement. Yes, It's very hard to tell with Randy. He is very eccentric, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's very hard to determine or to kind of make a judgment and decide what he is, because it's a very fine line, isn't it, between eccentric and batshit crazy sometimes. And that's where I struggled with him. And I felt sorry for him at one point because he was uploading. I mean, he was uploading several times a day at one point onto Twitter. This is when I was on there a lot. And it was a bit of a laughing stock. You know, people would be sending messages around going, oh, Christ, Randy's uploaded again. And it'd be something bizarre with all like echoing voices and clown faces. And yeah. So I really don't know what was going on with him. I mean, again, after what we were talking about the other day with MK Ultra, there were even some people, some of the conspiracy theorists on there going, think Randy Quaid's like a failed MK Ultra experiment. So yeah, I'm now, as far as I don't know if Joe's still in here. Joe Mardre, if you are, I just wanted to ask a quick question. We were wanting to talk about, obviously we kind of touched on Skinwalker Ranch, but we brought up as a topic for discussion night before last about the actual skinwalkers themselves. And although I know a bit about them, I didn't want to do them any injustice, because obviously this is, you know, this is a Native American legend or folklore. So I didn't know if you knew a lot or more about it, because, you know, if you did, I'd be quite happy for you to tell some tales to everybody if you wanted to. It's just I didn't want to go and you know, tell a story incorrectly and be disrespectful, because it wouldn't be my intention. It would just be because I'm ignorant as to all the different stories, because there's also the Wendigo as well, isn't there? That's another one, another strange one. Oh, I have that book from my side of the bed. If anybody wants to read it, I have to get it back from a friend first. Oh, that's the link that you posted in my in the comments, wasn't it, Simples? On the my live from the other day. I don't know what the rake is, Eternal. Is that, well, actually, I don't even want to ask, because I'll probably just get it wrong and embarrass myself. I've heard of it, I just don't know what it is. I know you mentioned that. Was it yesterday you'd put it in the chat? And I wasn't sure. I mean, there's all sorts of weird things, you know. As I said, when Sheila mentioned the Mothman, and I think Lisa had mentioned that as well. And yes, I've heard the tales of Mothman, but I don't know. That's one I don't think I believe in. I'm not going to criticize anybody else for believing in it, but I'm not sure that I do. In fact, I'm going to say no, I don't think I do believe in that. Although they are good stories. But then you've got the legends of the Thunderbird in America. And then you've got things like, you know, you've got all the Bigfoot legends, and you've got the Dogman legends. And then you've got the skunk apes are they in Florida, I think, which is supposed to be well, it's supposed to be kind of like a Bigfoot, but obviously it lives in the swamps there, and it's supposed to absolutely reek. Humanoid creature. I think we create a lot of these ourselves as we go along. Very probably. Well, it's like the have you covered the Mothman already? No, Mrs. Mercury, I haven't, because if I know Lisa wanted me to do it and Sheila had brought it up, I'm presuming you as well. I'd have to do some research on it because I don't know. I'd have to get some facts together because I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about the sightings. I do watch because I do like cryptid stories. So I do watch quite a lot of different ones. I mean, one of the ones I really, obviously I like the dogmen stuff. If you remember, we started off when I set this channel up for doing my lives, if you remember. I think you might have been in there, Mrs. Mercury, and I was telling the stories about the dogman, which I wouldn't mind doing some more of those because they fascinate me. But one of my big ones is about the Dyatlov Pass incident, which I don't know if any of you have heard. Well, I think some of you will have heard of it, but again, I think that has got a cryptid link in with it. I think I mentioned it one night, and I think bedtime clown might have been. I think Voodoo Queen was up as well, but we were up on panel together, and I mentioned Dyatlov, and it turned out he said that another creator had covered Dyatlov Pass, but he was interested in hearing, you know, from a European's perspective on it. Yeah, it is fascinating, Mrs. Mercury. It is. Yes, Simples. And I really like that. I really like that story. I mean, some of the photographs that they, you know, they looked at that were recovered with those bodies from Dyatlov. And there is a figure on one of them, isn't there, that looks like a humanoid figure watching them from the trees. It is the Russian hiker's pork chop. It is. And how they were found. I don't know if you know the full story of that, but it's absolutely fascinating. And I know Pork Chop had said he wouldn't mind if I did not Pork Chop, sorry, love. Bedtime Clown had said he wouldn't mind if I did one on Dyatlov, just to see what my perspective was different, because I think it was that Natasha one who'd done it. But I've read 2 books on Dyatlov, and I've probably watched about 4 or 5 documentaries on it. That fascinated me when I very first heard of it. I mean, again, that night, I mean, in the journals that they found with the bodies, or rather in the destroyed tent, they'd mentioned seeing lights in the sky that, you know, the night before they all vanished. They were hearing noises. They were feeling, well, they felt like they were being followed. The fact that all the cuts, you know, the tents, there were little slices all over the tent, but they were made from the inside like spy holes. You know, as though they were wanting to look outside without having to expose themselves fully by opening the tent up. It's absolutely fascinating, the injuries that those bodies sustained. You know, some of them, the injuries were absolutely horrific, and there's no explanation for them. Now, I know some people had said that they would, you know, that they thought it was probably the Russian military. These hikers had come too close to some military installation while they were doing some secret military maneuver, and Russia being Russia, they did away with them. And there actually was, funnily enough, a boot was found at the site of the tent where the tent was destroyed. Prior to them finding the bodies, they did at the side of the tent find one boot that didn't belong to any of the hikers, and it was a Russian military boot, but there was only one. Now, was that planted there? You know, to throw somebody in the wrong direction? Who can say? But yeah, I think Dyatlov it's such a fascinating subject if you're into that kind of thing. I mean, does anybody else, have you got any information on Dyatlov? other than me just prattling away. I mean, I don't know, we could have a bit of a talk about that if you wanted. Seeing as how I've whizzed through Todmorden very quickly. And I can... What, the one in America, Mrs. Mercury? Did they name the pass after Igor, or was it called that before the trip? No, they named it after Dyatlov. I mean, that area, it's called the Mountain of the Dead. The Mansi tribe have called that the Mountain of the Dead. So yeah, it was named for the leader of the group, who was Dyatlov himself. But yeah, if there's another... Oh, I don't know then, Mrs. Mercury. I'm not sure. I just know that there is an American, what they call the American Dyatlov Pass. But sorry, the American Dyatlov incident. But the only one in Russia that I know of is Dyatlov. I mean, I can just prattle on if you guys want, unless you want to keep talking aliens. Anybody mind if I kick off on Dyatlov? Because I plan to stay on probably till 10 o'clock tonight. So I've got over just over an hour, so I can do a bit on that. So unless somebody stops me, I'm going to tell you about the Dyatlov Pass incident, because again, it's something else that I read today. Was who blamed for Chernobyl? Eternal Flame. And I think I like this. I like this because it's obviously in the Urals. You and your bizarre ideas about finishing at 10. Well, I did it pretty... I think it was about 10:30 last night. No, Eternal Flame, no, unless it was a different Dyatlov. But this guy we're talking about, he died in this incident. No, I can cover Dyatlov in an hour. Because, as I said, with it being in the Urals, as some of you know, when I did my DNA, it found out that I'm 7% Finnish Ural. So then when I found out that this was in the Urals, I'm like, oh, I could be related to somebody here. So that, I think, was what sparked my interest initially in it. And then I just got obsessed with it. So, right. So, well, unless somebody's going to stop me, I am going to talk about the Dyatlov. Oh, Anatoly Dyatlov. There you go. So, yeah, you were kind of right, Eternal Flame, but it's a different one. So, for anybody who doesn't know, what they call now the Dyatlov Pass incident it was something that happened where there were 9 they were Russian hikers. So they used to do this snow hiking, where you'd have part of it you were hiking and part of it you'd have like skis on, and you're going through the thick snow. So they basically were hiking in the northern Urals. Oh, thanks, Mrs. Mercury. I'll check that out later on. I can't check it now because if I click on a link while I'm doing a live, I end up losing. I kick myself off. But thank you. I'll check that out when I finish the live. So yeah, so they were doing a hike, and at some point, sometime between the 1st and the 2nd of February in 1959, they died in suspicious, horrific circumstances. Now, this hiking trip, there were a load of college students, and the trip was led by Igor Dyatlov, and he was a very experienced hiker. And oh, sorry, I'm just checking that. Oh, oops. Oh, no. Don't worry. Don't worry. So basically, this group set off for this like skiing stroke hiking expedition. And Igor Dyatlov, who was, I think he was 23, 24 at the time, he was leading this group of 9 other people. And most of them were fellow students at the university that they all attended. So of this group, because there were 10 in total initially, there were 8 men and 2 women. And each of them were experienced hikers with ski tour experience. Now, this was as part of, because they used to grade them on their experience. Now, apparently they were all qualified up to grade 2 level. Once they'd completed this trip to the Northern Urals, they would then, on the return, be given the certificate to say they were now qualified to grade 3. So that was kind of part of why they were going. And that was the highest certification that was available in the Soviet Union at that time. And it meant that the candidates had to travel something like 190, 200 miles in order to get it. So, just trying to remember where I'm up to now. So, they left. Now, I think initially there should have been another person, shouldn't there? If anybody else knows it, I'm sure there should have been somebody else who was supposed to be joining them, because there should have been 11 of them. Anyway, on the 20, after traveling by train to get them to where they needed to start the trip, I think it was on the 27th of January, they started their trek up to the mountains. But the following day, one of the members of you've just beat me to it, Yuri Yudin, he was the one who the following day he had to leave because he had health complications. But no, not him. There should have been another one. There was somebody else was supposed to be going with them. So Yuri Yudin was the 10th person. There should have been an 11th. Hi, Green Eyes. How are you? How's your back today, lovely? Eternal Flame. Yeah, I remember that. Didn't they reopen the case a couple of years ago? They did. I mean, they've been trying to find out a reason for this for a long time. Oh, sciatic nerve issue. Oh, gosh. Well, I can imagine why you didn't want to go any further then. Bloody sciatica. I mean, he already, from what I can understand, he had quite a few health issues anyway. But anyway, he left the group, and the other 9 carried on. Now, because after they were found, so I'm jumping ahead slightly, but after they were found and the campsite was found following the disappearance, the cameras that they had and the journals, the diaries that they were keeping. Oh, you just stumbled out your bed, Green Eyes. Oh, well, I hope you're going to be moving okay. Oh, well, you're getting welcomed from Cassius, and your wingman's here as well. Yeah, so because they managed to find the diaries, we've just gone, Green Eyes, we've done the Todmorden UFOs, and I've just veered off now, and we're talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident. So I'm probably going to end up having to change the title of this one, just in case anybody's interested in Dyatlov Pass. I don't know if you are or not. Yeah, no problem. Well, I've literally only just started this Dyatlov Pass thing. So yeah, so because they had the journals, the diaries, and because they had cameras, it made it possible for investigators to track the route and what had happened from when they departed the train and got to their final destination up in the mountains. Sorry, just had a sip of pop. Well, I'm saying pop. It's soda water. How thrilling. So they started on the 27th. Read quite a lot on the website and have a couple of books. Yeah, it's just fascinating, isn't it? I'm trying to do this from a bit of memory. So because we just started talking about it randomly. So I'm gonna do my best, like I did that night with when Bedtime Clown was up on panel and we started discussing it. So I was trying to do it as best I could, but it's just to kill the last hour of my life. So they started the hiking on the 27th. They lost Yuri Yudin on the 28th with his health predicaments. Now on the 31st of January, they got to the highland, what they were calling the highlands of the Urals, and they started getting ready to do some climbing. Now they cached quite a lot because they had some surplus food and equipment. They decided to make a cache there was some woodlands, and to store this food and equipment for the hike back again, for the return trip. So they didn't have to lug it all with them, and that there would be supplies for them when they were returning, which, and that's good practice. So they'd done that. They made this cache in the wood, and then the next day they started to head up through the pass. Now, from what I can understand and from what it was revealing in their journals, they did plan to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side. But because the weather was getting worse and worse and worse, there were snowstorms and so on, they lost the direction and they ended up going off to the west instead, just by accident. And when they realised they'd made a mistake, they then decided to set up the camp on the slope of the mountain rather than go another mile downhill to a forested area that would have offered them a bit of shelter. Now, it was said, some people were saying that probably Dyatlov, because he was the leader of this, he probably didn't want to go back downhill again because they'd already managed to get to a decent height. That was possibly why he decided to stay where he was. Or he might have just thought, well, let's get a bit of practice in for camping in horrendously bad weather on a slope. Who can say? Because that wasn't marked off in the journals. Now, when they were leaving, Dyatlov had agreed that because the sports club from the university was sponsoring this trip, he had agreed that he would send a telegram as soon as they got back to the base camp. And it was their expected return date was it was around about Valentine's Day, I think. Anybody, if you know differently, please correct me. But I'm thinking it was sometime around the 14th-ish of February. Now, when this date passed, the sports club hadn't received any messages from them. They weren't initially worried because obviously being that time of year and being that the weather can change, you know, delays of a few days were not unheard of. So they did leave it a few days. However, now on the 20th of February, the relatives at this point, they demanded that there was a rescue party sent out, you know, to search for them. And so the head of the university sent the first rescue groups, which was made up of volunteer students and some teachers. But following that, the army and local police forces got involved, and then they also had planes and helicopters that were ordered in to take part in this search as well. Now, 6 days later, the searchers found the abandoned camp and the badly damaged tents. Now, the search party were at a complete loss because this tent that they were supposed to be staying in, it was covered in snow and half collapsed. It was empty of people, but all of the groups, all the belongings and all the shoes and socks were still there. Now, this was one of the anomalies that was found. The tent was sliced open from the inside. They found 9 sets of footprints leading away from the tent, left by people wearing only socks or barefoot. And they were they could follow these for a certain way, and they were leading down to the edge of a wood on the opposite side of the pass. So they're obviously running to these woods for shelter from something. And this was about a mile northeast of where the tent was found. So I'm just checking. I'm just going to check if I have missed anything in chat. Currently trying to control 310s and listen to this. Sounds like coffee and a smoke on the back deck. Sounds fun. Balmy 29C, shut up, green eyes. Please don't brag. I'm freezing. Non-invasive, like a swim before brekkie. Oh, nothing like a swim before brekkie. Just see you waking up and the kids have tied you up. Yeah, that'd be what had happened to me. So, another 500 meters on, these footprints have in the snow have vanished. The snow's completely covered them up. Now, when they got down to, when the trackers and the searchers got down to the edge of the forest, they found it's like a small fire, just the remnants of only a tiny little fire. And this is where they found the first 2 bodies. And these 2, all that they had on was their underwear. They didn't have any shoes on, and they were just dressed in their underwear. Now, the branches, the tree that they were found under, the branches up this tree were broken up to 5 minutes off at 5 minutes, 5 meters off the floor, off the ground. So that indicated that they'd been trying to scramble up the tree. Now, some people reckoned that they'd climbed up to look for, you know, maybe they were trying to see if anybody was around or trying to look for where the camp was. But I'm not convinced with that one. I know what my theory is, but anyway. So between there and the camp itself, the rescue party found another 3 bodies, and the poses that they were found in suggested that they had been trying to get back to the tent. And And they were at 3 different distances. I think there's like 100 meters between each one. So say if one was found 100 meters, the next was found 200 meters away, and the third was 300. It was something like that. There was like 100 meters or so between each of these bodies. Now, the last 4 of the hikers, it was a couple of months before they could find them because everything was covered in snow and they were having to wait for a thaw. And they were finally found. It was at the beginning of May. There was still about 10 foot or so of snow, and they were found in a ravine which was further into the woods than those people who'd been found under the pine tree. Now, 3 of the 4 bodies had a little bit more clothing on, and there had been signs that some of the clothing of those who died first had been removed for use by the others. So, you know, so like, you've died, well, you don't need your coat anymore, so I'm having that. It was that kind of thing. Now, they started, oh, sorry, let me just have a look about the girl who was found with her tongue removed, not cut out, removed. Yeah, they're, well, let me just have a think now. Her, oh, flipping heck. Wait for me a second, because I've got to remember her name. Was it oh God, hang on. It was Ludmila, wasn't it? Ludmila. I'm sure her name was Ludmila Green Eyes. I'm trying to think. Oh God, this is what happens when you've got one device that you're using. But yeah, Ludmila, she was kind of battered, wasn't she? She'd had a chest, I think all the bones in a chest and what have you had just been shattered, and a tongue was missing. But yeah, these were all the, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Ludmila. I've just had a complete brain fart now. Just bear with me a second, because I need to remember where I was up to. Can't remember off the top of my head. Right, so when they I do this, it's so easy when I get sidetracked and then I start off. So the first 5 bodies, when they were found, so, you know, this is before they've got to wait for the thaw to get the remaining 4, but the first 5 bodies, that was when they opened an inquest. Now, they weren't found with any injuries that might have led to the death. And the conclusion on those 5 was that they'd all died of hypothermia. One of the 5 had a small skull fracture, but it wasn't thought to have been fatal. So that wasn't deemed to have been, you know, part of the cause of death. Now, the bodies that were found in the May, that was a different kettle of fish, because 3 of the 4 had fatal injuries. One's skull had been stoved in, and the other 2 had like major chest injuries. Like I said, it was like a crushing. They'd basically been crushed. Now, it was described by the coroner there, Carrie, Damien, and Chucky. the 3 these nightmare grandchildren from hell. So the injuries that these had had, They were described as similar to that of somebody who had been involved in a high-speed car crash, but they didn't have any external wounds that were that could be associated with this, the severity of fractures that they had, or the fact of the amount of pressure that would have been needed to cause these fractures. Now, all of these 4 had been found at the bottom of a creek. And they all had soft tissue damage to the heads and faces. So it was Ludmila Dubinina. I've just had a little look on. I had a book here. I was just trying to find, when I do my notebook and I make notes and things, it's there in my notebook. It was Ludmila. So she was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. And one of the other fellas, his eyeballs had gone. And the other one had his eyebrows were missing. Now, one of the forensic scientists or coroners who was doing doing the autopsies and what have you, he said that maybe it was highly likely that these facial injuries had been caused because the bodies were found at the bottom of this stream, this creek. But yeah, removing the eyes and removing the tongues. Now, if you remember when I was talking about this with Bedtime Clown, initially the blame was put on the local tribe of Mansi. Now, they were indigenous people of the area, and quite a while prior to this, they had attacked people. They'd attacked somebody for being on tribal lands. Now, there were reports that the Mansi had there's been a bit of a confrontation with this group of hikers. And it was a shame because they were all carted off. They were basically, I wouldn't have wanted to be interrogated by Cold War Russian police or army as they were, but yeah, they were carted off and they were interrogated. They were kept for quite a significant amount of time. And it was only because after the bodies were found, and then when they found the footprints, and because they realised that they were the only footprints that were there weren't footprints showing anybody following or chasing or what have you, that they did let the Mansi go. Now, since then, it's been, there was a lady who was a little girl at the time. She's a very old lady now, but she was a little girl at the time, and she remembers the hikers coming through. Now, she said, yeah, there was a bit of an altercation between them and the Mansi. However, it wasn't what people were suspecting. She had said that her family and the rest of the people in the village at the time, they weren't arguing with them, telling them to get out. They were arguing with them, telling them not to go up to the mountain. They were trying to protect them, really. They were trying to give them some good advice, which they totally ignored. And then look what happened. Now, one of the weird things was why when they were found, were they only partially dressed? Because I think it got to -30 the nights that they were up there. But and plus, don't forget, it was storming. There were snowstorms, there were blizzards, all sorts of really high wind. But you were talking wearing either only socks or having bare feet. You've got some people who were just in underwear. A guy in a new documentary found a piece of rocket or something there years ago, and it was never released. Yeah, well, a lot of people as well, Green Eyes, never mentioned that one military boot that was found at the side of the wrecked tent. You know, so I think some of the things, that I think you need to bear in mind, and obviously this is very brief because I'm not, you know, this wasn't an intended chat, but there weren't any when the searchers looked, and so they got the police and the army in and whatever. If you can trust what they say, there were no signs of anyone else up on the mountain apart from the 9 travellers. The 6 of them died of hypothermia and 3 died of fatal injuries. That's strange in itself. I mean, how the hell did they get these injuries? The tent, the fact that it was ripped open from the inside, and there were loads of little cuts all at eye height, as though they were watching something out of the tent. And then if eventually they saw, because if you think about it, you're in those horrendously low temperatures. Why would you compromise your only form of shelter by cutting numerous holes? And these were all around the tent, so it was as though between them all they were trying to keep every area outside the tent in each direction observed. But by doing that, you're compromising your only shelter, because you've got loads of holes in your tent. It's not going to keep the cold out anymore, is it? I mean, a tent's not warm at the best of times. It was definitely an avalanche. There was another group about 10 miles to the west. Yeah, no, it wasn't. Yeah, no, I agree. It wasn't an avalanche, no. But yeah, at that particular spot, there wasn't anybody else there, Green Eyes. I never found any trace of anybody else. The other thing as well, when they released the documents following the inquest, now we know from what was said at the time that they had, you know, these 3 had suffered like horrendous internal injuries. There was absolutely no mention in the records, in the documents that were released, about any of the, you know, what condition their internal organs were in. And then there was also the fact that these fatal injuries couldn't have been caused, and this was what the coroner had said. The fatal injuries could not have been caused by human beings, because the force of the blows was too strong, and the fact that there was no soft tissue damage. So now there was something as well that I brought up with, this was another strange thing that I brought up with bedtime. They were Green Eyes. And do you remember when Cassius mentioned the other night about that documentary, Mermaid, The Body Found? And in that they're talking about, you know, it's like these sonars that are being used in the sea, and they would cause massive internal injuries to whales and dolphins. You know, because of this sonic boom, it was liquefying. You know, they look like they've been involved in massive accidents because of the internal damage. And I often wondered, could it have been something like that? You know, some sonic weapon or something that was being trialed. But if that was the case, then, because they all left at the same time from the tent, but if that was the case, why were only 3 of them injured in that way, and the other 6 weren't? It's I think, yeah, you can go along with some of the theories, but you would expect all of them or none of them, you know, not just some sort of shockwave went on a bullets bams and blast course with bombs at me. I was wondering then, I'm thinking, what? Military a few years ago, and they sound similar injuries. Yeah, but again, though, Green Eyes, why were only 3 of them? Why not all of them? Why not all 9? This is why I think this is always going to be controversial, because I can agree with it until you then say, yeah, but wouldn't everybody have suffered the same? Now, one of the little, less they were moved after, maybe. But one of the other things, do you remember when I was talking to Bedtime about it, and there was that guy called Zolotarev? Now, apparently, his remains were exhumed, and this was in 2018, and the DNA analysis. Anyone listening who you may remember me going on about this, they did a DNA analysis and it didn't reveal any similarity to any of his living relatives. And also, Zolotarev's name wasn't on the list of those buried at the cemetery with everybody else. But they did a reconstruction of his face from, the skull that they exhumed, and it did match the last photograph that was taken of him. But some journalists reckon that another person was hiding under Zolotarev's name after World War II. So that then brought in all this, more conspiracies started, and theories started to be put forward that they were all killed because there was a Russian spy amongst the group of hikers. No, it's definitely not a natural occurrence, Green Eyes. There've been all sorts of allegations, Mrs. Mercury. They've said that there were allegations of poisonous gas. Psychotic. They said that there was some weapon. There have been claims that it's been UFOs. There've been claims that it was a Yeti, because apparently, according to the Mansi, the Yetis that live in that area of the Urals, going up to the Mountain of the Dead, were known for stealing children and women who were away from the villages on their own. Aren't the sounds that can only be heard by certain age groups? There are, Mrs. Mercury, because you can get those anti-kid while you're thinking of getting them for your grandchildren. You can get some, you can get those anti-cat devices. There are ones that children can hear, only children. I don't know about different, older age groups, but I just know that there are some that only children can hear. Bit like a silent dog whistle. So yeah, it was only a couple of years ago that the Russian. Hi, Danny. Hello. Oh, you've missed. Well, unless you've been listening to it all the way through. Yeah, we're just having a little bit of a discussion about the Dyatlov Pass incident. This is what I always do. It wasn't the planned one. We've done we did the potential alien abductions from here in Northern England, but yeah, just started talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident in case you know about that, which you may have done. So yeah, but good to see you. Drive safely, and hope you're feeling better today. Yeah, so the Russian government, they've now completely done away with the fact that that a crime occurred. They've just ruled that out completely. They're not even, they're not even opening it up for discussion. And they've only got these 3 possible explanations that they are prepared to go with. And an avalanche, a hurricane, or a slab avalanche. Now, they're the only three options that the Russian authorities are prepared to run with. So, yeah, I'm just not... I'm not with it. And I'll tell you what else as well. There was one of the... something else that's worth bearing in mind. There was a young lad who was at the funerals of... was it 4 or 5 of them? And because he later headed up the Dyatlov Foundation, but he remembered seeing these, and he said that the skin was like a very, very deep brown, very, very deep brown. Now, there was probably about 30 miles away, the night that they all disappeared stroke died, there was another group of hikers, and they were about 30, 35 miles away, and they saw, this is where we're coming back to the alien thing, they saw some strange, they were like lights in the sky that they described as spheres. Now, there were also these similar spherical lights in the skies that were reported all over that area of the Urals, and that was between February and March of that year of 1959. Now, it wasn't just members of the public with this. People who were in the military had seen them. People who were working for the, they were meteorologists. They had reported them as well. But although they were reported in time, that none of these were actually taken into account during the investigation that was opened. So, I don't know what you all think. Let me just have a little look. It's got to be judged because the bodies were obviously frozen, which should have been a bonus. They had to defrost them before they did autopsies. Yeah, I remember seeing the photographs of them green eyes. You know, where they were kind of in, some of them were kind of semi-fetal position, like rock hard. And that Ludmila's face, because you could see her, because, with the eyeballs missing. Or what is it Casper says? Look at the eyeballs! Look at the eyeballs! Yeah, yes, they did see lights in the sky. Some had that strange fluid colour fluid coming from the mouths. I can't remember if it was all of them or just a couple. Yeah, definitely a government cover-up, definitely. But again, what are they covering up? Yes, Mrs. Mercury, you and Green Eyes singing from the same hymn sheet, but what are they covering up? Is it simpler to... It's simpler. Is it similar to what we've just talked about with Todmorden? Why would a gentleman who has his autopsy and inquest have found that there are no suspicious circumstances, they've given a cause of death, his body's released for burial, but then all the records relating to his autopsy and his discovery are classed as, well, they're classified? And why is Alan Godfrey, a serving police officer who is a credible witness, everything he said and all the reports about him are classified? What are they trying to hide? So now it's exactly the same with this with the Russian government. What are they trying to hide? I'm on the fence with government experiment gone wrong or UFO. A change in DNA would suggest use of radiation. Well, yeah, although I did throw it out there at the time when we discussed that DNA difference simples, that, you know, it could have been something as simple as he could have been adopted, but is, you know, nobody knew. You know, no, well, I'm saying nobody knew. None of his surviving relatives knew about that. Or, yeah, radiation. Or somebody else using his identity following the war. They're just so secretive, aren't they, though, the Russians? I'm not talking general Russians, I mean the government. And but I don't know. I'm not sure where Green Eyes has said, you know, with the government cover-up or UFOs, I'm not unconvinced. I'm still liking the idea of a Bigfoot. Oh, hang on, here he comes. Classified information is material that a government body deems to be sensitive information that must be protected. Access is restricted by law or regulation to particular groups of people with the necessary security clearance and need to know. A mishandling of the material can incur criminal penalties. Well, that's what I'm saying, though, Pork Chop. Is that why they kept, I keep going to say Trevor, Alan Godfrey's information? Is that why that would have been classified? Because it could have been deemed damaging to the police service because he was a serving police officer at the time of these incidents. No, well, exactly. Why would it be classified, Porky? You know, why would it's I know I keep going back to it and I'm probably getting really boring for everybody, but Zigmund Adamski's records shouldn't be classified. Why are they classified? Very strange. I'm leaning towards government experiments gone wrong. Yeah, Mrs. Mercury, it's just, yeah, it just answers, it just opens more questions after you think you've answered one and then you open another question up. They keep everything close to the chest, the Ruskies. Yeah, they do. You're right there, Cassius. Listen to this story about the Bigfoot and the bull, but made me cry. Oh, I've not heard that, Simples. Oh, is that it there, the link? Thanks for that. Alan Godfrey would be exactly that because he was serving officer. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's the only reason I could think of his, but not Zigmund Adamski's. Unless they've managed to keep those classified because of the link with Alan Godfrey, because he was one of the officers who found him. But then again, if that was the case, then wouldn't that mean every case that Alan Godfrey had touched would be classified? Hi, Sam. How you doing, lovely? We're all good. We've been talking aliens and we've been talking Dyatlov Pass, even though that wasn't on my intended topic list tonight. So at the minute we're just discussing whether we think it's government cover-ups or UFOs. I think it's a Yeti that killed them all in Dyatlov Pass, but that's because I'm weird. Zygmunt Adamski is classified as Alan Godfrey was the attack. See, that's, yeah, and I wondered if that was what it was, Pork Chop, which you may have heard me saying then. The American government has started unsealing files on UFO and have acknowledged they exist. Yeah, well, they had to, Green Eyes. They've absolutely had to, because all they've looked like is a bunch of liars. Especially when you've got all the independent evidence that they're there and that they've been visiting the planet for however long they've been able to document them for. Simply because the connection is not only the attending officer but the claims to UFO involvement. Yeah, that's what I suspected. I just wasn't sure. But it's infuriating because I would love to read about, you know, the injuries that he had. Hey, Butte, just found out now, commenting, I have turned my VPN off. I thought it was shadowed. Oh, no. Flipping heck. Going way back to Roswell. Yeah, well, look what happened with Roswell, Cassius. You know, with the whole stupid story about it was a weather balloon. Yeah, of course it was. Perhaps they're not visiting but leaving Earth. Yeah, well, yeah. Or just making return runs. You see, I know we're going through all of this, but I'm still not. I mean, I'd love somebody to make me a believer. Convince me if you can. I'm still not 100% sold on UFOs. I don't disbelieve it, but I'm not lapping it up like a cat with a saucer full of milk. Yeah, people can't comment. Thought it was because I'd reported shitload too much. Well, I should have been the same then, Sam, because I tell you what, my finger was just on that button every 2 seconds. Yeah, there you go, Cassis. Now that is another angle to look at it from. Maybe we're just coming, you know, maybe future versions of ourselves are just coming back to see what past versions of ourselves, how we're doing, and maybe doing what I've said I'd always like to do is if we invented, you know, there was a time machine, I would love to go back, you know, to specific points in the past to see what actually happened at various historical events. Maybe that's what people are doing. Oh, yeah. Oh, Green Eyes, tell me. Well, were you in when I was talking about what I saw at Lowton? I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a UFO because I haven't got a bleeding clue. It was just something incredibly odd. The puzzle is what level of classification of these documents? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, let's have a think now then. So, I mean, you can put, so a local police station or police force, regional police force, they can put their own classification, because I can do that. I can classify certain documents that I'm working on internally. But as the police force, and with it being related to like his, yeah, well, that's what I was just about to say. Then you beat me to it again. I'm wondering whether they have put it under one of the higher government levels of secrecy classification. They'd have had to provide justification for it, but it could be done. Oh, here's Green Eyes is. Right, we were out in the middle of nowhere, no lights, pitch black. We saw a hovering light on the horizon. Then it came closer and higher. Then fucking bam, it flew off at unnatural speed. Yes, there's a lot of people have very similar experiences, Green Eyes, with a light, you know, moving along slowly and backward, you know, on horizons, and then shooting up at fantastic speeds and shooting across at fantastic speeds. As the government would have to be involved due to the UFO involvement, this would fall under government restrictions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's sneaky. UFO involvements. I mean, the thing I saw, Green Eyes, that went from hovering like a helicopter, but making zero sound, just right above us. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, it just gone. And that was huge, but it wasn't a light. That was a black, like triangular, look, aircraft, I'm going to say. It looked very similar to one of the stealth planes, but much bigger. Another thing to tell everyone, think you are mad. So either top secret, or restricted. Either way, we ain't getting to see it. I reckon it would be under restricted. Because it's not going to class as, I mean, because obviously with some of the work I do, we use those government classifications, and just trying to think of if that was me having to put a classification on it, that would then go under restricted. That's what I mean. The speed is unnatural. The G-force is too much. The advances we've made, I'd love to know what was ours and what's unidentified. But I don't understand why the governments are so secretive. If they've got video evidence, if they have got radar evidence, why be so secretive about it? Because all it does is just start off with the conspiracy theorists going doolally tap and, you know, and making more and more wild assumptions about different things. So I just don't understand why, yeah, maybe don't release everything, but just say, yeah, you know what? One of our RAF pilots was flying back to Lossiemouth and they got buzzed by a UFO. It is about control, Green Eyes. Absolutely it is. You know, if they said that, yeah, people might go, well, what was it? At that point, you go, I'm not at liberty to say. But yes, there are UFOs. Yes, they do come into our airspace. Yes, they occasionally take the piss out of the pilots. You know, yes, there was something seen over Todmorden. There was something seen over Winter Hill. They've got them flying all over the battlefields in Yorkshire, and they fly around Ben Nevis on a Good Friday. If they just told us those little bits and pieces, you know, that would be, yes, it would, some people would just want to keep asking more questions, but it would satisfy the majority of people, wouldn't it? Those like me, I'm sat here now going, I just want somebody to give me some 100% proof that I can go, right, now I've seen it, now I believe it. I don't ever disbelieve people who've said they've seen something, because I can't tell any of you what you have or haven't seen. That's, you've perceived what you have, you know, you have chosen, and you're intelligent enough to decide what it is you've seen. It's like, I can't tell you you've not seen a ghost. I can't tell you you haven't seen a dogman. So I definitely can't tell you that you haven't seen a UFO. But I haven't seen it for myself. So that's what I mean. I'm a bit more of agnostic, if we can use that word, regarding UFOs. Once I see it properly, or I know what it is, I'll believe it. I'm kind of 50-50 over what I saw, but because I don't know, and it didn't look like a UFO, and I've never found any other sightings on that date in that area that have been logged, which doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's why I'm not classing that as, yes, I've saw something and I believe in it. I'll be honest though, Cassius, I don't even think they're drip feeding us. It's not even what you could class as a drip, is it? It's more like I don't know. If a government openly said there are UFOs, then the public would expect more money to be put into investigating them, and they would demand more information. If the government tell you nothing, you don't know which questions you need to ask and who you should be asking. Plus, if they can ridicule the people claiming to see these things, they can convince the majority it didn't happen. Sheep. Meh. Wycliffe Well in Northern Territory here is one of the top 5 UFO sites in the world. Is it? Now, where is the top one? Would that be America? Or Russia even? But see, like Pork Chop's just putting there, it all comes down to money, doesn't it? Money and control, money and control. But then I suppose you've got the fear factor as well, haven't you? What would, because, you know, as a whole, people were generally stupid. When it comes to panicking, we're stupid. And maybe they'd look at, you know, the majority of people on the planet aren't rational or critical thinkers. They're just going to blind out panic. I mean, you see what happens in a lot of less educated countries, shall we say. You know, they're out in the street chucking rocks just because they disagree with an inoffensive statement. Chile, really? Wow. Yeah, Cassius, complete and utter chaos. That surprised me, that Chile. But you're getting into those realms there, aren't you? The South America, where you've... I mean, South America has what I think is probably one of the best examples of interaction. If this is what it is, and it could be proven, it is one of the best examples of interaction between extraterrestrial beings and human beings. You know, look at everything that's in South America. Oh, are you looking at it as well, Green Eyes? You know, you've got let's look at everything in Peru and Mexico, and you know, you've got the plains of Nazca and those drawings on the plains. You've got the temples. We've got those spherical, you know, those stone spheres that we were talking about. You've got the crystal skulls. You've got the star children. You've got the cloud warriors. This is all South America. So it's not too hard to believe that, yeah, you know, a country in South America has got the Pass incident. It was the Urals, Pork Chop, where that little bit of DNA that I've got comes from. So the Urals are, so you go Norway, Finland, Russia, and that's the Ural version area there. What's that M triangle might need looking at then? What's that? I don't know what that is. So yeah, so I mean South America has a tremendous amount of links there, tenuous though some of them may be. Famous permanomalous zone is located in a remote area near the Ural Mountains in Russia. The M Triangle is one of the most mysterious places in the world and was discovered in the 1980s. Green Eyes Pork Chop, you were saying everything I am reading spooky. Ah, you see, this is what happens when you fly together. You're linking up, and you're gonna get it. You're a perfect battle crew. That's what you both are. You never know. Maybe I'm an alien then. The village of Molobkos sits on the border of the Perm and Sverdios regions. Opposite the village, on the left bank of the Silver River, is the famous Molyobka Triangle. I need to look into that then, don't I? Because they might be saying it's the famous Molyobka Triangle, but I've never heard of it. Hey, but having said that, this isn't about that. What do you think? Do any of you remember about that? What they reckon it happened in Siberia, and it was some sort of massive explosion. Now, it wasn't a meteor, and this happened, was it around about 1900, I think? And all the trees are completely flat, and it was like there'd been some massive nuclear explosion, and everything for a massive radius was just flattened. The trees were all burned and dead, and I often wondered if that could have been something alien related, maybe a craft taking off or something. It really interests me. People on the opposite side of the word connecting somehow. Yes, Green Eyes, it does. When Perm geologist Emil Bakarin found a circular 206-foot impression in the snow in the 1980s, the location quickly became a location for enthusiasts to explore Yetis, UFOs, shining spheres, and plasmoids. What's a plasmoid? Oh, I'm going to guess. Right, I'm going to guess at it. Is that just kind of a liquid moving shape, maybe? Like that shimmering shape that we were talking about that was found in, was it Yosemite National Park in America? Now, I am still with you guys, but as I desperately need a wee, I'm taking you with me. I am going to put you on silent just for a second, but I'm bringing you because I want to be able to see the chat. So back in one tick. Right, I'm back in the room. Sorry to keep you waiting. Did anybody know what plasmoids were? Or was that just me? I was thinking about hemorrhoids. No, I'm definitely going to have to read up about that triangle then. But yeah, I remember watching, oh gosh, it was a really, really old program, and they brought up that that explosion in Siberia, and they've never, and I'm sure there was like extraordinary amounts of radiation there as well. So something had happened. It was either, I mean, they didn't have the technology when that happened. The technology wasn't there, or not that they knew of. You know, for either nuclear weapons or some form of a craft that could have created that destruction over that range. So a plasmoid is a coherent structure of plasma and magnetic fields. Plasmoids have been proposed to explain natural phenomena such as ball lightning, magnetic bubbles in the magnetosphere, and objects in cometary tails in the solar wind, in the solar atmosphere, and in the heliospheric current sheet. Plasmoids produced in the laboratory include field-reversed configurations, spheromax, and in dense plasma focuses. Okay, so in English, I'm still going to go, it's one of those shimmery moving things. A bit like Predator. Green eyes, can you imagine us? You pressed send before you finished there, didn't you, girl? Plasma is emitted not as an amorphous blob, but in the form of a torus. We shall take the liberty of calling this toroidal structure a plasmoid, a word which means plasma magnetic entity. The word plasmoid will be employed as a generic term for all plasma magnetic entities. Can you imagine us all sat round a table at a dinner party in our discussions? You wouldn't want it to end. And, well, do you know, Green Eyes, I love talking about everything weird and wonderful. I mean, I'll tell you this, and then I'll see if you can believe this or not. Well, when he's finished telling us all about plasmoids. In geometry, a torus, plural tori, colloquially donut, is a surface of revolution generated by revolving a circle in three-dimensional space about an axis that is coplanar with the circle, just in case you were wondering. Thank you. I was just about to say pork chop, going on from Green Eye's comment about, can you imagine us all sat round a table at a dinner party and our discussions, you wouldn't want it to end. Well, Green Eyes, I will tell you about, because I don't think he'll mind. Clear as mud. No, I get you. I'm not that thick. But I'm still going to call it a shiny thing. Green Eyes, you just scrambled my brain. Well, Green Eyes, we had a discussion the other night, for 3 hours on the phone, trying to prove or disprove if God broke his own 10 commandments. And going through, we had a full-on theological discussion about how God would have broken his own, because we were talking about free will. So if God wrote the 10 commandments, how he would have broken them. And I think we did it. I think we managed to get all 10 examples of all 10. Eternal flame, I will sleep better now I know all that. Yeah. So yeah, we do have some very interesting chats. We have some very hilarious chats as well. But yeah, every so often. Yeah, we did only struggle on one. But yeah, we were coming up with examples of every single one of the 10 commandments. The only one we struggled on was one that we couldn't agree on. You put the argument for it, and I was still not convinced. So we couldn't agree on that one, but we agreed on the other 9. But we will also, we'll have those very in-depth discussions Yes, that's the one. Thou shalt not bear false witness. We couldn't agree on how God would have broken that commandment, given examples that were available in the examples that were in the Bible. Oh, will it, what, Cassius, about how God could have broken his own commandments? It's actually, I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was actually really good discussion. I mean, I did fall asleep once. Well, fall asleep. I only nodded once, but that was it. I was tired. I'd just done an 8-hour live, and then we had 3 hours of talking. But yeah, it actually really gets the old the brain cells working. But yeah, we'll go from that to talking absolute bollocks, but funny bollocks. Well, I think we've more or less all agreed that our governments are all shady MFs, aren't they? It was actually really interesting, Cassius. But then the problem was we couldn't remember all 10 commandments. I'm an agnostic, dyslexic, insomniac. I stay up all night wondering if there really is a dog. Yeah. Oh, ba-dum-ching. There's another one. So yeah, it's a good one to think about. It is a good one to think about. I enjoyed that discussion very much. So, well, I might surprise everybody now because it's 2 minutes past 10, and I did say I was only going to stay online until 10 p.m. And unless somebody comes up with a topic that they want to continue talking, I may close down the live. So, as they say, speak now or forever hold your codpiece. If you want me to keep going, throw something at me. Otherwise, I am going to try and get an early night. Only because nobody thinks I'll ever stick to my word saying I'm going to be off here by 10. Go back and listen to what I missed. Yeah, we were just, like I said, we were just talking about the Zigmund Adamski and Alan Godfrey cases in Todmorden, because I've never been, I mean, I've been through Todmorden, but I've never been up into the hills up there. So I am being taken up there on Saturday daytime, Green Eyes. So I'm going to take a camera and take some, and film a bit. We might see a UFO. You never know. Aries has to prove people wrong when challenged. Yeah, that's you, that, not so much me. So what I'm going to do with, I'll just prattle on for another 5 minutes. Like I said, if anybody wants me to, if I was ever wrong, I would admit it. But you, well, I've never been up to the, I've never been up into the hills there, Green Eyes. And Porky used to live around that neck of the woods, and he knows it very, very well. So, see, after I said I was going to do this tonight, and he was saying, yeah, well, we'll go up there on Saturday. So Yeah, I like going to new places. It's not somewhere that I would have gone because it's a bit of a trek away from here, but you know, the dog will get a good run round and I will maybe have some sort of a UFO experience or not. Imagine that though. Imagine if we get up there and then see something. Oh, explain that. In what way, Mrs. Mercury, when he said the Holy Trinity? Do you mean like what the Christian belief of it, or? I am still here. I'm just waiting because obviously there's a bit of a delay between StreamYard and chat. Used to love it up there as a kiddo. I remember that one unfortunate incident in 1976 when I selected a lemon ice lolly when I should have taken the orange one. Oh, is that the only time you've ever been wrong? Your Wi-Fi just dropped out. Yeah, I wasn't sure of Eternal Flame, so I was just hanging off in case you meant. But yeah, it was. Well, we were always told it was God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So Holy Trinity to me is onion, celery, and bell. Do you know what? You've just reminded me. My Auntie Kay, who is, because I get my meat from. Sorry, I'm going completely off the track. Well, it's. Do you know what, Mrs. Mercury? They used to always do it about. It was They used to use it, explain it as an egg, didn't they? That an egg had a shell, a white, and a yolk, and that was like so it's all an egg, but it's three different bits. You've got the egg shell, the egg white, and the egg yolk, and that was what the Holy Trinity was. It was God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, or God the Holy Ghost. Well, when he said that, the onion, celery, and bell peppers, my Auntie Kay always calls, if she has, because she eats offal like green eyes, and she loves lamb, so liver, kidney, and heart, and she calls that the Holy Trinity. In fact, the butcher calls it the Holy Trinity as well when you go in. Now, whether he's Catholic as well, but yeah. So I hope that kind of answered it, Mrs. Mercury. I mean, just going off my everything apart from the heart. No, no, I couldn't. No, liver and kidney. No, thank you. Now, hang on. Right, if I've just thought of something which somebody of a religious background may be able to answer. There's a fish. Is it a haddock or a plaice or something that they call it like the apostle fish? Because it looks like it's got a thumbprint on the back of its head. I can't remember which it is. Oh, what's it for? Chop those and place them on the bottom of your roasting tin. Then place the meat on top. Perfect gravy after cooking. Yeah, but you know what I'm going to say about your Holy Trinity pork chop? I'm not going to make the sound, but you know exactly why I wouldn't want to have it, regardless of how nice you say the gravy would be. Liver and fried onion butties. Oh, green eyes. No, no, and thrice no. I actually really do like the smell of it cooking, liver and fried onions. Yeah, pork chop, that's the one. Yeah, Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. I always remember that the lad who played he was the main character, Frankie, in in Angela's Ashes, and they're getting ready to take the first Holy Communion. He says, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Toast. Yeah, simples. I'm about to retch here as well. Not a literal father, the father, not his father. Yeah. I mean, I know they always say, oh, I'm glad I'm a vegetarian. Oh, are you? Oh. There's more and more people becoming vegetarians these days, aren't there? Unfortunately, for vegetarians, I am a carnivore. I cannot help it. I make no apologies for it, but I will try not to speak about meat too much if I know the vegetarians in the chat. I bet you do, green eyes. You mucky bugger. So do I. Say no more. Say food smut. And I also like the animal kind. That reads a bit wrong. Pork chop, pot calling kettle. Going off to listen to a spooky story for bed. Night night. Okay, simples. Nighty night, love. And probably see if you're going into the live-a-thon on Friday. But other than that, I will do something over the weekend. But yeah, I'm not going to be that far behind you. And onto the smut she goes. I'm not going smutty, green eyes. As you know, I'm pure as the driven. I'll have to have a look at that, the story that Simples was on about then, the Bigfoot, the female Bigfoot and the bull, because I've not heard of that one, so I might have a listen to that while I'm in bed. So, just a quick one. Pork Chop, are you still doing your stream at the moment? Speaking of smut, have you ever heard of a lady by the name of Belle Delphine? No. Belle Delphine. I don't know. It's what, you're streaming in 15 minutes, or you'll be finished in 15 minutes. Yeah, no, you can let us know who Belle Delphine is. Oh, yeah, you mentioned about her, didn't you? Selling £10 million selling her bathwater. Well, it's like that, whoever it was who mentioned on here. There's some woman who's bottling her farts and selling them, and people are buying bottled fart. I mean, what? That's absolutely £10 million. Imagine that. That's absolutely crazy. Oh, YouTuber porn star at Eternal Flame. She's a model and former Twitch streamer. She's now a porn actress because it makes more money. But selling bathwater and selling farts. It's just absolutely crazy, that is. I might try selling some farts. How much should I charge? I think, oh, was it Frida? I think it was Frida who'd seen the story and she said, yeah, it was, it's amazing how many YouTubers got into OnlyFans during lockdown. I wouldn't make much. I rarely have wind and I don't have a bath. I refuse to give you back payments. You've never heard me fart once, so shh. That was funny, that mysterious death, wasn't it, last night, where Denny said that some bloke had decided to give his wife a Dutch oven, and his fart was that strong, the methane killed her while she was wrapped up underneath the quilt. Yeah, I could see that coming. Carefully rethink your never heard me fart statement. You haven't. You haven't. I'm a lady. Now I am trying to think. Some. Oh, no, it wasn't. I've just remembered. I've just remembered. So he cut me my tea on. The prosecution rests. No, he cooked me my tea, and it was shepherd's pie. Obviously, something mucky is. No, it was a proper. I've just remembered. I'd nipped to the loo, and I was telling Cooper to get out the bathroom because the shepherd's pie gave me a touch of wind, but I didn't think he'd heard me. Why? What did I say? Is that not what I said was cottage pie, or did I say shepherd's pie? It was cottage pie. Yes, I am a heathen. But yeah, he shouted the dog in out the bathroom. He's going, "Come here, Cooper, before she shits on you." And I'm like, I'm not going to shit on anybody. I've just got a touch of wind. But I didn't think you'd heard me. But anyway, there you go. It wasn't it wasn't anything wrong. Oh God, I think now's the time for me to beat a hasty retreat. It was the dog who was farting, not me, never me. The worst thing is, listen, there's nothing worse than being in this cottage that's got paper thin walls. And my bathroom is next door to my next door neighbour's bathroom. And I think their toilet must be against the same wall that my toilet's at. And I kid you not, I went to the bathroom one morning. I was getting ready for work and I was brushing my teeth. And I think she was on the toilet, and she's a big lass. I think she was on the toilet and had done a fart. Trying to have a quiet shit. No, I wasn't having a poo. He was with me and still managed to make it sound like he was farting in the bathroom. Yeah, but anyway, she's sat on the toilet, and I'm not kidding you. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It sounded like, you know, when you hear the Tyrannosaurus Rex on Jurassic Park starts roaring and it's shaking everything, right? That's the sound I could hear come through the wall. So I'd sent her a text and put, fucking cork it up, will you? She was like, what? I said, I can hear you shitting in my bathroom. Like, I'm not shit. I said, well, you've got wind. You know, I mean, you should just be able to have a quiet fart in your own bathroom, but, you know, whatever. But no, I don't fart. Do you know my dad still says, pull me finger? He'll still go, pull me finger. And we fall for it every time. 71 years of age. But of course, it is very rare that it happens with me, because I am incredibly ladylike. Oh, well, it's natural. The thing is, though, if you don't let a fart out, it'll make you explode. And it can make your eyes pop out of your head because of the pressure in your body. So you have to let a trump go. I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to run. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you all are. All right, babes, I'll send you a text in a minute about tomorrow. But thank you very much for coming in and once again providing us all with lots of information and letting the chat know that I shit all over me dog. Thanks for that. Love you, bastard. Have a good one. Anytime, shitty ass. You cheeky bastard. Oh, don't encourage him, anybody. Don't laugh at him. Just pretend he's not there. Night Greenhouse, keep an eye on this one. She's unhinged. I'm unhinged. So just like my hubby, they would get on well. No, it's lies. It's lies. Don't believe any of it. It's a wrong one. It was a little trump. That's all it was. So I am going to I've gone over by half an hour, but we'll be all right. Right, guys and gals, I'm gonna wrap this one up because I did intend to finish at 10. It's nearly past, which isn't too bad for me. I will probably see you all on. I won't be online tomorrow because well, I don't think I will because I'm going over to Porky's. So I shall be online. I'll come on for the live-a-thon on Friday, and then I'm going to do at the weekend, probably Sunday. I'm going to do Boudica and the Missing Ninth Legion because I'm going to tie those two in together. So I hope that's well, you know, if you want to listen to it, you want to listen to it, and if you don't, you don't. It's entirely up to you. It's always lovely to see you all in. Oh, Nanite Mrs. Mercury and Green Eyes and Kathy and Cassius and who else is in Eternal Flame? And anyone else I might have missed. Simples went, didn't she? But yeah, so it'll possibly be Sunday. But like I said, I'll catch up with any and all of you on Friday for the live-a-thon. And yeah, so everybody have a lovely evening or daytime or afternoon, wherever in the world you are. And I'll catch up with you in a couple of days' time. So you all take care. Bless everybody. And as I always do, I'll see you all on the bright side. Take care, everyone.